Hello, listeners, and welcome back to I'm Not the Book Expert, but She Is. My name is Maggie, and I am not the book expert.
And I am Rachel, your book expert for today. However, this is not where our host list ends today. We have invited one of my favorite people to join us in discussion. Leah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Leah, and I'm Rachel's sister. I also went to college with her and Maggie. And I actually only started reading just about a year ago. At the start of 2021, I got really into reading, which made Rachel really happy since I avoided reading pretty much all my life. So she was happy about that.
Very much so.
We are both happy about that, in fact. What kind of books do you like to read, Leah?
I like fantasy, contemporary, romance. I've gotten really into classics this year, so that's been pretty cool.
That's a very good variety of books.
Yeah, it's fun.
And some things that me and Rachel don't necessarily talk about very much, so it'll be good to get your perspective on our next two books.
Yeah, I got you.
So, Maggie, what have you been reading recently?
What have I been reading recently? Well, I've been reading our books for our next two podcast episodes, which we'll talk about. But aside from that, I finished reading Loveless by Alice Oseman, which I adored. I listened to that on audiobook, and it was absolutely delightful. I also listened to Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. That was another audiobook I listened to. It reads a lot like an Artemis Fowl book with some other element to it that I can't quite name. Someone smarter than me has probably come up with a good comparison, but that was very good. I rated that 5 stars as well. Highly recommend for the middle grade fantasy lover in your life. I listened to a nonfiction audiobook called Cultish by Amanda Montell, which is about cults and the language of cults, which, you know how some people like really get into serial killers? I think my thing might be cults a little bit. I don't know why. We're not going to unpack that right now. But
that's fair.
So that was a really good book to listen to. I read A Far Wilder Magic by Allison Saft. The reason that I picked up that book was because someone I think the author on Twitter said, this is like the Scorpio Races meets Full Metal Alchemist. And I was like, sign me up. And it was delightful.
Do you know who retweeted it?
Was that Hannah Whitney?
It was Hannah Whitney.
It was right up my alley. That was also a very good book. It was much more romance heavy than the stuff I normally read, but I did not think that was a bad thing. I really enjoyed that.
I love that.
And I've also just been rereading my favorite Pokemon manga series, but we don't have to talk about that right now. That's just kind of my for fun thing on the side.
Well, speaking of rereading things, since the last time we recorded, I have reread Truly Devious once, and I am on my next reread. So if you are just catching up here, one of my goals for this year is to reread Truly Devious every month. And so far, I've done it. I'm on my April reread right now, and it's great. So I read that, From Here to Eternity, Traveling the World to Find a Good Death by Caitlin Doty, as well as her children's book called Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs? And other questions about dead bodies from small children. One of my favorite reads recently has been Eat Your Heart Out by Kelly DeVos. Fat camp participants, zombie breakdown. We'll leave it at that. They are not zombies at a fat camp, as I accidentally convinced my sister of.
I was so confused when she was talking about it.
Understandably.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm on Leah's side here, sorry.
I also read the entire Charlotte Holmes series. So that's 4 books: A Study in Charlotte, The Last of August, A Case for Jamie, and The Question of Holmes. I read The Bone Spindle, which is a retelling of Sleeping Beauty, A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. Hilarious, loved it, middle grade, delightful. I also read A Song of Wraiths and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown, and that might be one of my favorite reads from this year. I loved it.
I'm so glad.
I am maybe getting to see her speak coming up, so I'm really excited for that, and I can't wait to read the second book, which I have from my library.
Excellent.
And then I read one more horror book, which is Meddling Kids, and it was all right. It wasn't my favorite, but I didn't hate it.
Yeah. That was the one that was like the Scooby-Doo sort of vibes, right?
Yes.
And that's right up your alley.
Very, very much so. But that's, again, not where our reading list ends, because we have Leah here today.
Yeah, so I've been reading through the Lord of the Rings series. I'm on the 3rd book right now. I also read The Hobbit before that, so I'm on the 4th kind of in that series. I also just finished the Narnia series, the Chronicles of Narnia, which was really cool to read through.
Do you remember Dad reading those books?
Yeah, well, only little parts of it. So like when I was reading, I was like, whoa, I like have a vague memory of that, but where in the world did that other thing come from? So it was very funny, like reading through all those. I also just finished reading the Merciful Crow series, which we're gonna talk about, so I'm really excited. And I'm also reading through the Briar U series by Elle Kennedy. I really like that. I'm currently on the play, so that's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. And I'm reading For the Wolf, which Rachel and Maggie are very excited about.
Yes!
Our goal in life is to convince more people to read For the Wolf.
For the Wolf and the Merciful Crow and Little Thieves.
And we already got one, right? Our friend Lydia from college read For the Wolf and enjoyed it.
I'm about a chapter or two in.
Excellent. Good.
I think you're really going to like it.
Mm-hmm. I also think so.
It's a very, like, it's not like dark woodsy. It's like medium woodsy. It's cute, but it's not too dark, but it's not a light story.
It's like not straight up cottagecore, but like a little darker.
It's like dark cottagecore,
but not
like dark academia dark.
Yeah. That was probably not very helpful.
No.
It's okay. I
like it so far.
That I think you're really going to like it.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like we should point out we are live in the studio, quote unquote, together today.
Yes, all three of us in the same room.
So normally when Rachel and I record our episodes, we are on a Zoom call, like, thank God for Zoom and all that.
Yes.
But today we are actually live in person with each other. And Leah is here with us, and it's very exciting.
Very, very exciting. And something that I do want to point out in this episode and next episode is we are recording these back to back.
Yeah.
So if you're listening and you're like, this feels very reminiscent to when they were just recording, or to the last episode, it's because we filmed them all. Yeah. Or
we're doing them all on the same
day.
Weekend because we're overachievers.
Woo! But, Leah, you have one more note on here that I think I want you to talk about. What are some of your favorite series or favorite books?
Well, actually, the Merciful Crows it's up there. I also really like the Cruel Prince series. I read that last year and I really liked it. And I actually still send like any fan art or anything to Rachel and our cousin too, because we're all super into that series.
We call that group chat our cousin book club.
Cousin book club. The three of us in it.
Yes.
One of my other favorite series is the Maybe Someday series, and that's really cool because it's the author, Colleen Hoover, partners with a musician, Griffin Peterson, and he actually made a soundtrack for the book. So in the book, it has all the lyrics written out, and then I listen to it on Spotify. Whenever a song comes up, I'll read the lyrics in the book and listen to the songs while I'm going through it. So it's really cool how they kind of came together and did that.
And that's something that's kind of throughout all of her books, right? Or at least most of them, because she has, even though Ugly Love isn't based in music, there is a song that he wrote.
Yeah, so
under the same name.
He's partnered with her for a few other books, which I think is really cool. So he did that with Ugly Love, the Maybe Someday series, and November 9. I think there might be a few others, but those are the ones that I know for sure.
Because she also wrote It Ends With Us.
Is that the one that just came out?
No, that one's been out for a while. She's writing a sequel to it. Sequel? Prequel?
I don't know.
Something
to go with it.
Yes, It Starts With Us. But I think that story is based on her mom.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. I didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure. I think I saw a TikTok about it because I follow her on TikTok.
The more you know.
Yeah. But are we ready to get into our conversation today?
You do not have to ask me
Let's
twice.
do it.
Who wants to read our description for today?
I can do that. I will gladly do that, in fact. I'm so glad to not be in charge for once, guys. This is a real pleasure for me. I just get to go with the flow. So, I think we kind of mentioned this already. We kind of alluded to this already, but we are talking today about The Merciful Crow by Margaret Owen, which is one of Rachel's favorite books. It may
of
be
all
her
time.
favorite.
Yeah.
And next episode we'll be talking about the sequel, The Faithless Hawk. So here's a little bit just to whet your appetite about The Merciful Crow. A crafty crow, prideful prince, and haughty hawk embark on a cross-country rescue mission to deliver the crown prince to his military allies. However, will Prince Jasimir and his hawk bodyguard Tavin survive the crows in Fi's band, or will they fall prey to malicious night riders? Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun.
I almost did that too.
I feel like we need to do that every time.
Right, because we always have rhetorical questions in our book descriptions, which I just think is quite fine in this case.
Yes.
Like, as an English teacher, I get really tired of rhetorical questions and essays, but when you are writing something where you want people to be interested, I think it's fine to give them this information in the form of rhetorical question because you want them to figure out what the answer is.
Exactly.
I think that's totally fair.
Yes.
Not that I'm biased or anything.
Just a little bit.
Before we get into our discussion, we do want to list our trigger warnings for this book and what we might be discussing today. So we have a lot of murder and attempted murder, lots of blood, lots of death, specifically death of parents mentioned. We have dismemberment, vomiting, fire, plague, teeth and bones, and torture. Yay!
As we said in one of our previous episodes, this is not a book to read if you want joy and happiness. That was not about this book, but I feel like it is applicable.
Yes. What did we say that about?
We said that about what we devour.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Oh.
Which is also a very good book, highly recommended. But
100%. That was also was that number 2 for me? These were number 1, and then What We Devour was number 2 for last year.
Mm-hmm. That was on our top 10 books of 2021.
Yes, indeed. So if you haven't listened to that episode, please go ahead and listen to that one. Mm-hmm. But are we ready to talk about The Merciful Crow?
I am so ready to talk about The Merciful Crow.
Okay, I think before we actually talk about our characters, we should talk a little bit about the magic system we have here.
Yeah.
So we have, in The Merciful Crow, 12 castes of people. And those 12 castes are all named after birds. However, the characters are not birds themselves.
They're humans.
They are humans.
They are human beings. I also just want to point out that as Rachel started talking about the caste system, we all started pulling out our books. The books have a list of the castes in the first couple pages, like right after the map.
I also listed them in our show notes, but the graphic is just so pretty.
How
could you not like it?
But yes, we all pulled out our reference at the same time.
Also, something we didn't talk about, but I think we need to talk about, is I own 3 copies of The Merciful Crow itself.
Yes.
I have the original hardcover I bought, I have a paperback, and then for my birthday, Maggie gave me a signed copy of the book. Mm-hmm. I cried. Do I need to say more?
No. I like to think I did a good job.
Yes, very, very much so.
Not to brag or anything.
But within our caste system, we have Phoenix at the top, and each caste is born with a birthright, so they have the birthright of fire. Then we have the Splendid caste, which has 3 different birds in it. So we've got Peacock, Swan, and Dove. Peacock can change in appearance, Swan makes you desire things, Dove is all about artistry. Then we have our Hunting caste, which has the Hawk, Crane, Owl, and Vulture. Hawk has a blood birthright, so they can do healing, but then they can also harm you with their blood birthright. Cranes pull out truth, owls have memory, and vultures are all about hunting. Then we have the Common caste. These are the kind of bottom rung before you actually get to the bottom. And the Common caste has gulls, which control wind, pigeon for luck, sparrow for refuge, so they can hide. And then at the very bottom, we have the crows, and the crows have no birthright.
Yes. The Common caste is like the bottom rung of the ladder, and the crows are like the ground.
Yes.
Beneath the ladder.
Yeah. They
are the lowest of the castes.
However, if you are a crow witch, you can use teeth and bones to, quote-unquote, steal.
Yeah.
Steal would be the language used by the higher castes.
You call on the birthrights of other castes by... Your book just crinkled very loudly.
I know! I'm so sorry.
So, within each caste, you have witches, right?
Mm-hmm.
And witches have just an extra...
A stronger birthright.
A stronger birthright than non-witches. So the Crow witches, they can call upon the birthrights of other castes using their teeth or bones.
Yes.
It is most commonly teeth because they are the most accessible. You do not typically see crows carrying around, like, a femur or something.
Okay, well, I was thinking about that, and, like, if you couldn't carry around teeth, like, I think the next most likely thing would be, like, finger or toe bones.
Yeah, we talked about this, and I was really grossed out by the thought.
Okay, well, I don't like teeth.
I know you don't.
Do we want to talk about it?
I think we need to talk about it. Rachel's family is very well prepared for if they ever need to give teeth to crows.
We, a couple years ago, right, found out that our parents kept, like, all of our baby teeth.
Mm-hmm. They just, like, put them in a drawer. Like, in a dresser drawer.
And, yeah, like, in our dad's wardrobe. So he just has, like, 4 sets of teeth.
All mixed together. It's not, like,
they're
separated.
not separated.
Are they sorted by child?
No.
They're just all, like, thrown in there.
It's like, here you go. The Tooth Fairy came, and the Tooth Fairy decided that this is where the Tooth Fairy is putting the teeth. And
so if anyone wants to do an ethically sourced the Merciful Crow cosplay, you know where to find us. We have the teeth.
We have the teeth.
That's what I was thinking. So we've gone through the caste system, so you have a little bit of background in regards to that. And our main characters are Fi, Tavin, and Jasimir. Fi is, I think, like, one of my favorite characters of all time.
For sure.
Like, she is
awesome.
On point. She is a crow witch. She's a chief in training, but she's a witch, so she can manipulate teeth to use different birthrights.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love her.
I love her. I love how angry she gets to be throughout the book. Like,
oh, yeah.
100%.
I love how... I think a lot of times when I was growing up, like, when female characters got angry, it was seen as a weakness. As a, you need to be level-headed in order to be a leader. I love how her anger is her power. And that is one of my favorite things about Fi.
100%.
And they even talk about it, too. They're like, you do not want to mess with her.
Yeah.
Like, she's a crow witch, but her anger is what you need to watch out for.
She will also punch you in the face.
Yeah.
Right? She doesn't need
she
magic.
Does several times throughout this book, in fact.
She does not need magic to hurt you. She has no fear of physical violence in the way of she will act on it, and I love that about her. But she also uses her words, right? She's not just physically violent. She will also, like, tell you to stop, and if you don't listen, she's not afraid to act on that. Love her. The only character who I think might top Fi is Tavin. And
I'm sorry.
But what you did not see was when I said the one character that could top Fi, Leah got all scrunchy and cute and was like...
I love him.
So this is Tavin. Tavin is the Crown Prince Jasimir's body double. He is a hawk witch. He is a bastard child, and we don't actually know who his mother is. We don't know who his father is. His father left him unclaimed, and we don't know who his mother is until much, much later.
Yeah, we know that she is. So the Hawks are the Hawk caste because their birthright is blood. They are typically the bodyguards and soldiers.
They're the military caste.
They're the military caste. So Tavin eventually tells Fi or somebody that his mother is serving in the military somewhere.
Yeah.
But we don't know her identity. We don't know his father's identity, obviously.
Right.
So that's all left to be a mystery. We just know he's a bastard.
Yes. And they do make several jokes about that. Like, Tavin is totally fine without his dad.
Yes.
And he is very, very much a mama's boy.
Oh, definitely.
Hardcore mama's boy. And he just is so sweet, and we love him.
He's funny, too.
Oh, so funny.
I love it.
I think of Tavin and I get emotional, but it's fine.
We're fine.
We're fine. Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. But his charge to guard is Prince Jasimir, the crown prince of the country.
Yes. Who is a phoenix, but he is not a phoenix witch. So his birthright when he's on the palace grounds, he can control, create, manipulate fire. When he is not on palace grounds or when he's not on a dead phoenix god's grave, he's just fireproof.
Yeah. So only a
Just
phoenix
fire.
witch, only a phoenix witch can summon fire, but all
Yes.
phoenixes are fireproof.
Yes, and phoenix witches can also remove fire.
Yes.
They can manipulate fire,
Mhm.
I think is the best way
Yeah.
to put it.
Mhm. Yeah.
And Jasimir is kind of a little poop head a lot of the time, but you grow to love him.
Yes. I will save most of my discussion for Jasimir for another time, but even by the end of this book, I would consider myself a Jasimir fan.
100%.
I'm a sucker for characters who start off terrible and grow, and Jasimir definitely fits that category. Everybody in this book has some character growth to go through. Fi does, Tavin does, Jasimir does, especially. Jasimir's arc really resonated with me for some reason, apart from the other characters, so I definitely wanted to, like, slap him a couple times.
Oh, 100%.
More than a couple
Definitely.
times, maybe, like, every other page for, like, the first...
Whole book.
Yeah, but, like, by the end of the first book, I am very pleased with who he has become.
Yeah.
He definitely is a character that I wanted to have, like, Edna Mode moments with, right? Like, jump up on a table and whack him with a newspaper.
Yeah.
But also because I knew that he had that potential.
Mm-hmm. This is gonna sound like a weird take,
but
I say this because I was homeschooled growing up. Jasimir was very sheltered growing up, right? He's a crown prince. He's almost never left the palace, right? He's like, he is the prince, and he must take the throne someday, so nothing can happen to him.
Yeah.
So we'll find out when we talk about the plot, like, he has been removed from that sheltered situation.
Yes.
And is basically being thrust into this brand new world. And that just very much reminds me of, like, people I knew, like, growing up who were, like, in that sort of, like, sheltered homeschooler environment. Not that all homeschoolers are sheltered, please forgive me. But...
we
Everyone just made a face at the table.
Because, okay, you were homeschooled.
Yes.
Leah and I were homeschooled for part of elementary school. So, like, we have had the homeschool experience. We all went to a college that had a lot of homeschoolers in it. So we all made the, like, big-eyed, but most of them are face.
But to your point, like, that, it reminds me of, like, that, okay, you're, like a lot of the people we went to school with who had a homeschool experience growing up, and, like, being out at college was their first time in the quote-unquote real world.
Right.
And you're being exposed to a lot of new things, and you're trying to figure out who you are. That's kind of who Jasimir reminds me of, if I had to make an analogy to, like, the real world. He has been removed from his sheltered situation and is being thrust into this world, and he has to figure out who he is and what he believes.
Very much so, and Tavin is the best friend who goes to public school.
Yes. Tavin is the bad influence from public school.
Yes.
And we love Tavin.
And we love public schoolers, too, but, like, you know.
Me and Leah. Let's go. So those are our three main characters, and we do very much love them all. Very dearly. But within our adventures, we have some more characters who are crows, and they are some of my favorite characters, like side characters in this book. So we have Pa, who's Fi's adopted dad, whose real first name is Kerr, but he is the current crow chief, and he is also he is also a crow witch. He is very much a guide for Fi, and I would also say for the boys as well. Like, he is a great example of a leader who leads by guiding, right? He's not, to use kind of an educational term, he's not the mage on the stage. He's not standing up there telling you what to do. He's the guide on the side.
I like that. I also think this is just a good place to point out quick. So the crows travel in bands together. Like, there are crows throughout the country, and they all travel in bands, and each band is led by a crow chief who is a witch. And so this is Fi's band that she is.
We didn't even talk about why we have the crows.
Do we want to go into that real quick?
Well, we do need to go into it a little bit, because the crows travel in bands to deal mercy to people who have taken on the plague, right?
Yes.
They have the plague. They have the sinner's plague is what it's called. And you cannot survive the sinner's plague. Mm-hmm. And to prevent it from spreading, you have to kill whomever has the plague.
Yes. And the crows are the only, did we say this already? The crows are the only caste who are resistant to the plague.
Yeah, they cannot get the plague.
So, therefore, they are the ones who deal mercy.
They also can't spread the plague. Like,
they can't be carriers.
Yes.
It's really interesting how, like, that's not something I would have thought of, like, 3 years ago, right? Like, mm-hmm. Can you be a carrier and not be able to get the plague?
Yeah.
But now that we've lived through plague and are still living through plague,
it is something I would have thought about only because I've had mono, and I don't know how I got it. So one of my friends had to have been a carrier at some point and gave it to me. But if we had read this book pre-COVID, I don't think any of us would have been like, oh, carriers of the plague. Mm-hmm. But these books technically came out pre-COVID and were written pre-COVID, but we all read them
during COVID.
In the midst of COVID.
Which makes things hit a little close to home sometimes, and I think we'll talk about that as we...
But you know what? I am here for that.
Mm-hmm.
I am here for that because this book, I think, is very approachable to talk about illness in a fictional sense.
I definitely agree. So that's why we have crows. That's why they travel in bands.
Yes. And why a lot of people hate them, because they associate crows with illness and death mm-hmm. and thievery, even though the crows don't steal. But continuing on with our crow band that we love, there's also Wretch.
Wretch!
Yeah.
We've got Wretch. Yay! Yeah. I think that's very telling of our personalities.
Yes.
But Wretch is...
I'm also on my second cup of green tea, so that's also part of it.
Wretch is a delight. She is the only other female crow that we really interact with in this book. And she is very protective of Fi. She's very much Fi's mother figure because Fi's biological mother died on the roads. It's a very common thing for crows to die, either from hunger, other illnesses, or getting murdered, which we will talk about later. And Wretch is just very, very protective of Fi. She's very much the mother figure and has a bunch of witty one-liners, and
mm-hmm.
I love it.
She's so great.
She's also one of, like, most of the other crows that we get named in this book seem to be, like, in their 20s or 30s. Mm-hmm. Wretch and Pa are, like, the older ones.
They're, like, 40, 50. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, still very physically capable, but not...
Not old, but older.
They're not spring chickens.
Yes.
I think that's fair.
Spring crows.
Spring crows. Also, we don't have a chicken cast.
Or a goose cast.
Or a duck cast. This is something Maggie and I have talked about in the past.
Rachel was like, why don't we have any casts who, like, manipulate water? And I was like, what would it be called, Rachel? The duck cast? Like,
yes!
Anyway.
Then we have Hangdog, who is also a crow witch. He is kind of Fi's counterpart in the band. Like, they are both crow chiefs in training under Pa.
Yeah. Hangdog joins their band
mm-hmm.
so that he can train under a crow chief.
Because his entire original band was killed.
Yes, they were all murdered.
Which is very sad. Continuing on. He is called 2-second clever, so he thinks that he is being super, like, clever and smart, but in reality is not. Like, he is being taken advantage of when he thinks he's being the one that is doing the advantage taking.
Mm-hmm.
He's not the brightest bulb in the pack.
No. Yes.
But, side note, he's attractive?
Oh, yeah. This was a whole thing. When I read this book, Hangdog does not, like, seem that...
He's not ugly in my head.
Well, yeah, but he's not, like... I don't particularly care for him, necessarily. Mm-hmm. I think he's kind of obnoxious in the way that, like, young men tend to be.
Mm-hmm.
No comment. But he is specifically mentioned by Fi as being, like...
attractive!
Not wanting for looks or something like that.
Yeah.
She's like, he's failing in a lot of other areas, but this is not one of them. And I was like, huh?
Wait, what?
I only noticed that on a reread.
I think Rachel I snapped both of you and I was like, Hangdog's attractive? I think I was, like, at lunch at school or something, and I was like,
Wait, what?
And all of my students were like, are you good? And I'm like, no! I'm not!
So that's Hangdog. We'll talk more about him.
Yes, we will. We also have Swain. The only thing we really need to talk about when it comes to Swain is that he is the only crow in the band who can read a written language as opposed to the crow signs that all of the crows can read.
Can I say something else about Swain that I really like?
I love him.
I do really love him. He was also married at one point.
Yes.
His wife was also a crow with him, which I think just kind of... We don't know very much about Swain. He does not appear very much in the book.
But he is important to note.
But I like how he contributes to the world of the book. That, like, there are marriage rituals within this cast, and there are, like, loving... Even within this already found family kind of dynamic, we also have other relationships being established. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I really like Swain. I love him, in fact.
Swain lost his wife to the roads, and that's how the crows talk when one of them dies, is they were lost to the roads. And every year for her birthday, he always finds flowers to give to her, even if it's just leaving them on the road.
For his wife?
For his wife. It just... Swain is the best type of simp we can have, as an example of an older person being a simp.
He still doesn't strike me as old as Pa and Wretch, though.
But I would say
he's
older than the main characters, obviously, because the main characters are between 16 and 18. But I wouldn't say he's in his mid to late 20s. I would say he's like mid to late 30s.
I would agree.
Would you agree, Leah?
I would also agree.
People can't see you nodding in an audio recording. And then we have potentially my favorite crow.
Yeah.
And it's Madcap. And first of all, Madcap uses they, them pronouns. It's great. They're so crude. And I love them because they're always the ones to like break out in the walking songs that are like not appropriate. But is definitely there to alleviate the stress of being a crow. And Madcap is just delightful.
They strike me as sort of like the older sibling to like Fi and Hangdog.
Oh, 100%.
Like, or like that cousin that you have who you always looked up to, who's like super cool and who's actually kind of a train wreck.
Yes.
I did not have that experience because I'm the oldest, but like maybe I am that cousin, who knows.
We definitely have cousins like that.
Oh yeah.
Love our cousins. Definitely have cousins like that.
If you're listening, hey.
If you're listening, how did you find our podcast without me telling you?
That's the magic of the internet, Rachel.
Okay, but she doesn't count. She seems to have her stuff together. And she's not an older cousin. So those are the crows that we have in this book. We have several other crows that join us in the next book, but these are
the ones who get named
in this book. And we love them.
We do.
Some other characters before we get into the plot we should talk about. We have Draga, who's a hawk witch. She is head of the military and twin sisters to the previous queen. Draga also has many spouses. That's something that is like noted several times in the book.
I think her title is Master General, which just sounds...
We love Draga. We love a lot of the characters. That's not the point, though.
Can I say something that you're not going to get, but I think is relevant?
Yes.
If you're a fan of Full Metal Alchemist, she gives off very Olivier Armstrong vibes. Just going to throw that out there.
Delightful. So Draga's twin sister is Jacindra. She was a hawk and probably a hawk witch. However, when you marry into the Phoenix caste, you lose your birthright. So Jacindra is Jazimir's mother and Draga's sister, and she was married to Suramir, who is a Phoenix witch. He is the current king of Sabor, and he is an absolute terrible person, and I hope he dies in a hole.
Me too. I hate him.
Me
I don't like him.
He might be on my insta-kill list.
We need to start an insta-kill list so that people can reference this.
Yes.
This is not the first time we've talked about it.
And for legal purposes, this is not an insta-kill list of real people. It is exclusively fictional people. And I think that's fair.
I think that's all we need to say about that.
Yes. But then we have our main antagonists of this book, and we have Rusana, who is the current queen.
Sorry.
of
I had something
Sabor.
in my throat.
She is currently married to Saramir the King, and she is of Swan descent. We also have Tatterhelm, who is a vulture. He hunts people for the queen. So as part of the vulture birthright, he can hunt things. We have Vimo, who is also a vulture. She also hunts people for the queen. And then we have this whole group of people called the Oleander Gentry, who are terrible, terrible people, and they hunt crows for fun.
Yeah, they get into disguise at night and just run around killing crow bands who are camping by the roads.
Usually after they have dealt mercy to somebody
Yes.
in their village.
Yep. They are known for dressing in all white.
Wearing
and
veils.
And veils. Don't they paint their faces
Yes.
too? Paint their faces with like chalk or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They very much have KKK vibes. For good reason.
Yes. And I think that is intentional.
100%. I don't think you can do this with the white robes, with the veiling, with the painting of the faces, and not paint a very KKK image in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fair.
Yes.
So those are our characters that you need to know before we start talking about the plot, which is just...
Good plot. Good plot. We love plot.
I'm so excited.
I'm actually, if you don't mind, as we go through the plot, I might just be looking through my book and see if so Rachel corrupted me. Let me start there. Rachel
oh my goodness, I did not.
She totally did.
She totally did.
Thank you for siding with me, Leah. I appreciate
You don't even know what it is yet.
Rachel
I do know
corrupted
what it
me. And when I was rereading The Merciful Crow, I was marking it up as I read, which I actually enjoy doing. I thought it was really fun to do, but I think as we go through the plot, I might skim through some of my pages and see if I said anything that I think is particularly clever.
So I read at school during my lunch usually, because I don't have to work during lunch. We get duty-free lunch, regardless. I have students that eat in my room, and they would see me writing in my book, and they thought it was super blasphemous. And I was like... First of all,
kid, it's my book.
Right, like it's my book. I own it. They're like, but you're writing in a book, and I was like, okay, and
it's not like it's a holy scripture or something.
And even then, how many people write in their holy scriptures?
Yes.
So they're wrong.
Yes.
Sorry, y'all. You're wrong.
I also think this is a good time to tell the audience what happened to Rachel while she was annotating The Merciful Crow.
I started a brand new pen with The Merciful Crow.
When she started the book.
Yes. Oh. And it ran out of ink!
Like 2/3 of the way through.
Not even! I didn't even make it to part 3 with it. So I go from this, like, dark blue color, and then it, like, becomes super desaturated, because there's no more ink in it. And I was like, is there something wrong with my pen? Like, what's going on? So then Maggie opened my pen, and she was like, you used all of the ink. And I was like,
I thought something was wrong with the pen, but I was like, we better check and make sure there's ink in it. There was no ink in it.
There was no ink in it. So then I had to switch to this, like, salmon-y color, which was fine, because I picked colors based on the book anyway. But I did leave a note in my book that says, also very salty that my previous pen ran out of ink. WTF, Rachel.
I think that is a good testament to how much Rachel loves this book.
I think I have an annotation on every single page, with the exception of the very first page.
Interesting.
I'm not sorry. And sometimes my annotation is, like, just underlining it, and then sometimes I actually write something with it. But, I do very much like annotating my texts, but only on rereads. I do not like annotating on my first read of a book.
I'm with you.
So, are we ready to talk about the plot?
I'm so ready to talk about the plot.
So ready.
So, we open the book with a very simple sentence of, Pa was taking too long to cut the boys' throats.
What an opener.
Insta-violence.
Talk about a cold
I am here
open.
for this. And as it turns out, this crow band has been requested. Summoned.
They've been summoned.
By the Plague Beacons to deal mercy to a bunch of lordlings, specifically 2 lordlings. So, Pa is taking care of it, and usually Hangdog and Fi would then go in, wrap the bodies, and bring them out, because then they have to have a funeral pyre.
Mm-hmm. You have to burn plague bodies, or else plague spreads.
Yes. So, things didn't go according to plan.
Just a little bit.
And they end up with these 2 bodies, and they're like, okay, we're gonna go leave, and they can't get out because their way out is blocked by the queen. The king, nowhere to be seen.
Yeah.
But
he's kind of useless.
He's very useless. But at this point, the queen is blocking their way out, so Fi figures out that one of the people they have in their wagon is the crown prince.
Mm-hmm.
So then they call the money dance, which is I would not want to witness the money dance.
Oh, I totally want to.
I would love to watch it. I think I'd be scared out of my shoes, but like
I would be crying. Let's be real.
It just sounds such a fascinating thing.
Oh yeah,
it's just noise and chaos meant to intimidate.
But it's like, to anyone watching it, it looks like chaos. To anyone involved, it is very organized.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I think I would enjoy being part of a money dance.
I think it'd be so cool. The closest thing I can think to of this is like the Haka. You know, how it's like they're all organized, but like watching it, it's like, what is happening there?
Yeah, and I mean, it's a war dance, right? Yeah. Like, it makes sense. Mm-hmm. So that was a really good comparison. I didn't think about that.
Mm-hmm. I just read this part earlier this morning.
Smart. Look at you being prepared. We were not prepared.
I'm prepared for this one.
Mm-hmm. More on that in next week's episode.
But I think that this is one of the first moments where Fi really becomes the chief of her crow band.
Yeah, have we talked about how the queen tried to pay them?
She tried to pay them with a cat.
Now, and let me say this, as a lover of cats, considering they are taking care of the palace's problem, a cat is not nearly enough payment.
And what they call payment is called the viatic. And the viatic is based on the means of the person you are serving.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And when you are serving royalty,
they can afford more than a cat.
They can afford more than a cat.
It says a stray cat is fair pay for a beggar at most.
Yeah.
At most. Mm-hmm. But even then, normally viatic would be like dried food or firewood, or if it's really bad, maybe a cart or something. And the crows aren't going to take more than what they need. Because
crows go where they're called, they cannot hold like a regular job like other cats can. So their means of staying alive and survival is to deal mercy and take the, how do you say that word?
Viatic.
And take viatic, receive viatic. And that is how they survive. Mm-hmm. So without viatic, they are doomed. And it's just a huge insult from the palace for them to just be like, here, take cat. Yes. Which, like, you can't even eat.
And just as a side note, most of our pronunciations, or at least that I say, will be based in the audiobook because I have listened to the audiobook more than one time. But that's another story.
Moving right along.
Moving on.
So they call the money dance.
And Fi is just so filled with rage at this point, and good for her. She, like, tells the queen, like, this isn't good enough, and tells the queen that she wants the teeth. The phoenix teeth, which have not been released to crows in, like, 1,000 years. Mm-hmm.
Can I read this paragraph that I highlighted?
Yes, please.
So this is page 16. Fi's anger was a curious thing, sometimes tempered and unwavering as cut steel, sometimes raw and unstoppable as a cut vein. Now an old, sharp kind of rage climbed up her spine, forged of every blade pointed at her for a jest. This is right before she demands the teeth from the queen.
Yes.
And I was like, I wrote, good for her!
I also underlined that paragraph, and I'm going to read down a little bit further from 16 to 17, because this book is all about what she wants.
Yes.
There is a repeated motif of she wants this, or she wanted that. So she wanted to look the splendid cast in the eye without fear. She wanted to make the hunting cast think twice before flashing their steel for laughs. She wanted her ma back. But since the queen couldn't give her any of that, she'd take the next best thing. I'll have the teeth, Fi said. Like, how can you not love Fi as of this moment?
She knows her worth.
And she's 16! I have many a feeling.
And, like, in that, the queen doesn't give it up.
No.
Like, she's like, no, you're being disrespectful. I'll give you this, but I definitely won't give you all these teeth. And then Fi starts to count up. Of, what is it? 100 or something.
Yeah.
And she threatens to leave the dead bodies at the gate.
Yeah.
Which means the plague would then, spread through the palace.
Yes. And it only takes a count of... At the count of 10, the queen's servant was sent running. By the count of 70, he was back, thrusting a heavy brocade bag into Fi's hands.
And then they go to leave, right? And then... And then Fi turns around and she plucks the cat from the steward's hand. I'll have this too. The cat didn't fight as Fi scurried back to the cart, only buried its face in the crook of her elbow with a grumble. By the time they cleared the gates, it began to purr. Fi decided she liked the cat. Anything happy to leave the palace had good taste.
We love the cat.
We also love the cat. The cat does not yet have a name, which is why we aren't using the cat's name, but the cat does get a name.
Yes. So they leave the palace.
Madcap, a crow allergic to dignity. I feel like that just sums up their characters so well.
Incredible.
I love them.
Like, once they clear the palace, they're just celebrating, because, like...
Yeah.
First of all, most of them are like, I can't believe that worked.
Right?
And I think they're really impressed with Fi's ability here. But, so they all get their chance to celebrate.
But the end of this chapter...
I love the end of this chapter.
So Fi and Pa are talking. And she pursed her lips. So that's what a sinner prince looks like. The dead boy sat up. Well, no, he said, but I've been told I'm fairly close.
And the next
Turn
chapter
the page.
opens. Go ahead.
Fi didn't intend to punch the boy, but she did all the same.
Fi didn't intend to scream either, but that happened too, and with enthusiasm, as did tripping over her feet as she bolted back, landing on her rear in the damp grass. Hangdog's curses and Pa's roaring laughter only muddied her panic. I just think that... So we find out that this boy who sat up and started talking is Tavin. I said, good, it's what he deserves.
Yes.
I also think that that's the moment he fell in love.
100%.
Oh, definitely. It's such a funny part there. Like, no, I'm not the prince, but I look like him, and then get punched in the face. What?
We hadn't talked about Fi and Tavin falling in love.
Oh well. I don't care.
So as the B plot of the story, Fi and Tavin fall in love. Prince Jasimir has absolutely zero interest in Fi because Jasimir is gay.
Yes.
And he gets a love interest later, and we have feelings about the love interest, but this book is very much about Tavin and Fi, and we're here for it.
Yeah. I also just like Pa in this scene. Like,
yes!
He says, "Here, here," Pa said, wiping tears from his eyes as he reached into the cart to help free them. "You've gone and spooked my girl."
Which, only a father.
Yes.
Only a father.
I like that he is not immune to just harmless little pranks like this, too.
Yes. Yes.
I also think that's when he started to like the boys.
Oh, for sure. Pa, her voice came out strangled. Did we just kidnap royals?
So, yeah, now we've gotten these boys out of the palace and we gotta figure out what to do with them.
And the very first thing that we do is we cut an oath.
Yeah, literally cut an oath.
Yes. So the original deal was Pa and the band would just bring the two boys out of the palace.
But now they want more.
Of course, because they're a phoenix and a hawk.
Mm-hmm. They're used to getting what they want.
So Fi makes them cut an oath saying that if they deliver Prince Jasimir to safety, that they being Jasimir and Tavin, will give hawks to the crows to protect them until crows have achieved a higher status.
Yes.
Or at least not going to get murdered when they walk the roads.
Right. And the whole reason that Jasimir needs to get out of the palace, by the way, is because the queen's trying to murder him. Yes. And has made several attempts, in fact. So their way of getting out was to fake their own deaths.
Mm-hmm.
And they plan to have Jasimir make this miraculous
recovery
and come back, and he's the rightful king because he survived the plague.
And somebody in his ancestry had already done that, and she was like the pinnacle of royalty.
So he's that ancestor reborn is kind of the claim that they're going to make here. So they cut this oath.
Yes, I do. As a side note, within 5 minutes of meeting Tavin, she's already ready to hit him 2 more times. Good. Just gonna put that out there. But they cut
what
this.
He deserves.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. We love him.
We do.
They've cut the oath, and now they're traveling with the boys as part of their band.
And there's a lot of. We don't have to go totally into all this right now since we're just kind of summarizing. But there's a lot of kind of just character development. Like, there's not a lot that happens on their way to this city. Well, They do get attacked.
Yes.
But most of what happens at this part of the story is just kind of showing more of their characters, showing, like, the relationships between them,
and a lot of world building.
Yeah.
And you really do need that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is the part, sorry, I'm just backtracking a little bit. On page 34, Tavin ran a hand over his dark hair. She's got a point, Jazz. Several, in fact. Enough points I'm starting to think she's mostly thorns. And I said, boy might be a bit smitten already.
Double underlined.
Ooh. And that's Tavin talking.
That made it in my reading journal, too.
Ah.
Because she is thorny, and we love that. Okay, I'm going to pull in another connection to books that neither of you two have read.
Gosh dang
I know.
Rachel.
The Stalking the Jack the Ripper series, the main character is named Audrey Rose, and she, growing up, was always told that Rose are both beautiful and harmful. And that you should be both. Right? Not maliciously harmful, but, like, you have this defense mechanism. And that's very much what Fi is she is the thorns. Right? She doesn't take the crap sitting down. She's very strong and independent, but still has this loving support system that really works for her, and we all really love. But that's besides the point.
Yes.
So the band is trying to reach Cheparoke, which is a kind of city-state almost that is just to the west.
It's a major trade city. It's actually
it's east of it's east of Dumosa, which is where the palace is.
Yeah.
So they're trying to get there. While they're on their way there, they get attacked by an Oleander Gentry band, and then they continue on their way to Cheparoke. They get to Cheparoke, and this is where we learn that Fi can't read, and this is the first time she's ever really felt embarrassed by her lack of an ability. And during this whole process, Hangdog has kind of turned against Fi. Like, he very much thinks that she is just falling for this higher ranked person and is upset about that.
Yeah. And something we didn't really mention is Fi and Hangdog have kind of a history. Nothing, like, terribly serious.
They're, like, friends with benefits.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. And I'm sure Hangdog is feeling some level of jealousy, but I think he's also feeling like you're really going to turn your back on your family for a boy with pretty words.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that going on as well.
Yeah.
Do we need to talk about what happens in Cheparoke?
Yeah.
So the band, I'll say it because I think I don't know if Rachel can handle it. Unless you want to say it, Leah.
Go ahead.
In Cheparoke, they bring Jazzmere to his family or to his allies, and his allies turn on him. And they turn on him and the crows, and they have to make a quick escape. And well, first of all, Hangdog is part of this plot, and this is where we're going to get into some spoilers. So, Hangdog is killed. He has turned on the crows.
He's turned on the crows to this vulture group that is hunting them from the queen. Right.
And he doesn't do it because he hates the crows. He does it because he wants to be rid of the boys. He wants to trade. Mm-hmm. We find out later he was promised that he would no longer have to be a crow if he just turned in the prince and his bodyguard. And that's what he does. And of course they turn on him, and Hangdog is killed by the vultures. So, and in the ensuing chaos, we have to get out of here. Mm-hmm. And let me just find... It's easy to find because it's at the end of the first part, right?
Yes.
So we see Tavin, Jazzmere, Fi, and Pa. They're all kind of like huddled in a safe zone trying to figure out, well, how do we get out of here? And Tavin says...
What page are you on?
I'm on page 130. Thank you for calling me out. He says, we have to get out. And Pa says, I'm a marked man. Those vultures could follow my witch sign through all 12 hells. They were marked when they came into the city, but Fi managed to avoid it.
Fi and
Tavin both managed to avoid it. He said, there is no we here, Lord Hawk. And Pa gives his chief's blade, which is used for dealing mercy. He gives that and his string of teeth.
Not his string, his bag of teeth.
His bag of teeth, sorry. His bag of teeth to Fi. And Fi knows what this means. Like, and she's like, no, I'm not going to do this. Mm-hmm. And he says you have to keep the oath. You have to get the prince to his allies, to people who will actually protect him. And Fi is, like, understandably very distraught and is like, no, I'm going to stay here with you, or I'm not leaving without you. And Pa turns to Tavin and says to Tavin, you need to get them out of here.
And Tavin says, yes, Chief!
Because he follows orders. Like, that's...
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He will do whatever is necessary to make whatever happen.
Yeah, he didn't always want to take orders from a crow chief, but he will do what is necessary.
Yeah. He has to keep Jazzmere alive, and now Fi, like, the three of them are kind of stuck together because they have to keep the oath, find whatever allies they can to keep that oath, but they have to get out of this situation first. Mm-hmm.
I like that Pa trusts Tavin to get this done.
To protect his daughter.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
that's his girl.
You've gone and spooked my girl.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can I read? I might skim some of this. I wrote like a whole page of words at the end of this chapter. I'll just read some selections here. Some selections from Maggie. I'm really emotional about this scene, especially the final exchange between Fi, Tavin, and Pa. Tavin is determined to get them all out before Pa tells him that isn't happening. So Tavin is determined to save Pa as well, right? Mm-hmm. Then we see Pa finish handing the mantle over to Fi, which he's been working up to. Like, he's handing over the mantle of chief to Fi. He knows this is going to be a lot for her, but he has faith in her, and he knows she'll be able to keep the oath. But he also realizes this will be hard for her, and he trusts Tavin, who by all rights Pa should distrust and even hate. Hawks are notorious for being unkind to crows.
I have a text evidence about that I'll read after this.
And he trusts Tavin, who he should not. He trusts Tavin to get Fi and Jazzmere to safety. And I said, TBH, it's more important about Fi, but, like, Jazzmere is here too, and he's part of the package, I guess.
Well, because they have to keep the oath, otherwise it haunts them in their next lifetime.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And Tavin doesn't argue with Pa. He just says, yes, Chief, like a soldier taking orders from a superior. He respects Pa as a leader despite their difference in caste. Mm-hmm. So I just have a lot of feelings about that, obviously.
And when it comes to trusting the Hawks, literally, like 5-6 pages before this, on 124, we have the three main characters, Fi, Jasmine, and Tavin, all in an upper area of Cheparoke, and Fi is getting pulled away from the boys. Like, she is, her hood is yanked back, and a hot guard has an iron grip on her, is what it says. And the next thing you know, we have somebody else talking, and it says, "What do you think you're doing?" A fist shot over her shoulder, cold, closed around the hawk's wrist and gave it a vicious wrench. The guard let go with a yelp and reached for the sword strapped at his side. Somehow, in the last few days, Vi had forgotten how fast Tavin could move. It seemed all she did was blink, and the market guard was already crushed up against the wall, Tavin's elbow pushing into his windpipe. "Easy, cousin," Tavin said tightly, more a threat than a reassurance. "Think nice and hard about what your next move is, because if you're lucky, I'll just settle for letting Aunt Loca strip your hide." And then the guard recognizes Tavin and the prince, and Tavin goes, "Are you a special kind of stupid?" What part of think about your next move was unclear, continuing on. And then the guard continues talking kind of about Tavin and Fi, and the guard goes, "I thought you'd come alone," the guard mumbled. "Not with him or your honey rag here. Since when do you suck crow's sugar?" And back up against the wall, the hawk guard went, face first this time. Tavin's voice turned to a razor-sharp calm that warned of thin ice. "I suppose 'shut up and listen' was a tall order, but do it for your country, all right? I want you to tell," and then they continue on about getting the attention of the leader of Cheparoke. Mm-hmm. So immediately before, we have Pa trusting Tavin to get Fi out. We have Tavin, protecting Vi, but also we have this, like, betrayal of the Hawk Code, because the Hawk Code is to protect their country and kingdom.
Mm-hmm. And like it or not, the crows are part of their country.
And that's the end of part 1, and we have them then running away from the people that are hunting them.
They flee Cheparoke, and when they finally kind of get their bearings, they come up with a plan to go to Trigavoy, to meet with Master General Draga.
Yes, who we know is Jasimir's aunt.
Right.
And that is where we are cutting today's episode. We talked so much that we decided to split it up into 2 episodes. So catch us next week for the second half, aka parts 2 and 3 of The Merciful Crow. However, if you want to find any of our social media, we are on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all under Book Expert Pod. And you can feel free to send us an email at notthebookexpert@gmail.com, and we will gladly get back to you. So until next week, bye!
I'm nervous.
Why?
Don't be nervous.
It's not like we have a live studio audience or anything.
Rachel cleans up all of our nonsense in post.
I do.
She really does.
Kind of a miracle worker.
She is.